You want to design a guitar. What does that mean? Where do you start? Do you start with this? One of those? One of these? No, we start with this. I'm going to show you how to do it. Stick around. Hi, I'm Brian Nutter. I am the head luthier at Novo Guitars in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm the former head instructor at Musicians Institute Guitarcraft Academy. I have taught people how to design, repair, and make electric and acoustic guitars. I'm also a used-to-be pro musician. That's a totally other Google search. The purpose of this channel is to give you understanding of how the guitar works, how to design, choose lumber, buy tools, restore stuff, draw in CAD, use a CNC machine. Everything you wanted to know about paint, or at least everything that I know about paint, I'm going to show all of it to you. So I hope you guys will like and subscribe and stick around. There are a ton of ways to achieve the same result. And I'm sure that plenty of you out there that are going to be doing things differently than I do. That's all right. I would love to hear your processes and your thoughts or any other ideas that you guys would have for videos. The only thing I ask, don't be a jerk. To start designing a guitar, we need a few things. Here are the tools. Pencil, a 6-inch rule, a protractor, dial calipers, yardstick, the paper, preferably about 18 inches wide because we don't know how wide your guitar can be yet. Some blue tape to hold down your paper, and then a large flat work surface that we can spread everything out on to draw. Before we can do anything on the paper, we have some decisions to make. Number 1, what's our scale length going to be? 2, how many frets are we going to have? 3, what kind of nut are we going to be using? 4, what kind of bridge are we going to be using? 5, what pickups are going to go in this thing? 6, what tuners are we going to use? With the tuner question, I mostly mean, is it going to be 6 in a line or 3 on 3? The guitar that I'm going to show you how to design or draft today is going to be a bolt-on, probably a smattering of both Fender and Gibson spec. To have the most accurate drawing you can, you need to have a really, really sharp pencil. Now, mechanical pencils obviously have tiny little leads, but we can make it even sharper. Here's how I do it. I take a little piece of sandpaper, usually around 220, lay that flat down on my bench, and I'll go. That'll create this micro bevel right here on the very tip of my pencil. My lines will be super thin, really crisp, really precise. The first thing we need to draw anytime we're designing a guitar is a center line. So I've got my paper all laid out here. I got my corners taped down. I'm going to take my yardstick and just in the middle of the paper, I'm going to draw one long line. Now that line doesn't have to be dead in the middle of the paper. You don't have to do a bunch of measuring. We just need a long straight line. That line is what we're going to use to base all of the geometry for the guitar. For the nut, that's the first thing I want to place. I'm going to come in from the left side of my paper about 8 inches or so. That 8 inches is going to allow for the headstock that we will design and draw on here. I'll use a protractor to make a perpendicular line about 2 inches long, 1 inch to either side. The reason for this is going to show us where the nut's going to go. I had mentioned scale. Scale length. What is scale? Scale is the distance between where the string starts making vibration at the nut to where it makes contact with the bridge saddle at the high E string. It's based off of the smallest string. So that number, that distance between the nut and where the high E string makes contact with the saddle, we use that number to be able to lay out all of the fret divisions. Now, that's an entirely another video that I'm going to do very soon, so sit tight. Until then, go to stumac.com, scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, click fret calculator. That's going to take you to a page where you can then put in your scale length, your number of frets, hit calculate, and boom. All of the fret positions from nut to the final fret, distances between each fret. Doesn't matter if it's 24 3/4, still gonna lay out all those fret divisions. 25 1/2, 25, doesn't matter. We're gonna do 25 1/2 today. From my nut position, on my center line, I'm gonna take my yardstick and I'm gonna measure 25 1/2. And I'm gonna make a tick mark down here. That's my scale length. The scale length now, I'm gonna refer to that as my intonation point because that's where I'm going to base intonation on this guitar. I need to know what my final fret is going to be. Where's that going to locate on my center line? For a 25 1/2 inch scale and 22 frets, that 22nd fret is going to be 18.344. So from my nut position, I measure 18 using my yardstick. I'll make a little mark. And then using my dial caliper, I'm going to measure 0.344. Here's how you use a dial caliper. If you have a look at this thing, every rotation of that needle. That's 1/10 of an inch. Every number around our clock face here is 100, and every tick mark in between is 1,000. 0.344 is going to look like this. 18.344. I now have my nut position, I've got my intonation point, and I've got my final fret location. Go ahead and mark that 23rd fret just to have the end of your fretboard. So now we know what kind of nut are we going to use here. Are we going to use a Fender style nut, which is a thinner nut that sits in a slot that has wood on the back for support? Are you going to use a Gibson style nut that butts right up against the end of the fretboard? You're going to use a Floyd that requires a whole shelf that the thing needs to set in. For ease, what lets you do a Fender style nut. So from front to back, it's going to be 0.125 or 1/8 of an inch thick. At my nut position up here, I'm going to go back toward the headstock and I'm going to measure 0.125 back, and I'm going to make a little mark, and then I'm going to use my protractor and I'm going to make a parallel line. Nut width traditionally on a Fender would be 1.625 or 1 5/8. More modern guitars, you're going to see 1 11/16. Through the shredder era of the 80s, you would have seen even out to like 1 3/4. Let's do 1 11/16, which is also 1.688. 0.844, half of 1.688 is what I need to mark either side of my center line to give me 1.688. I'm going to measure 0.844 to either side and make little marks. There's my nut width. My final fret width is going to be determined by my bridge. Traditionally, a Fender is going to be around 2.21 at the final fret. Gibsons use a little bit more meat to either side. So you see a Gibson being 2.25. I like 2.25 because I might end up putting a Floyd on this later, or I just like the feel of the wider neck heel. So down here on my final fret, I need 2.25. I'm going to measure 1.125 to either side of the center line. I can connect those 2 points now, the one at the nut and one at the final fret. That gives me my taper from the nut to the final fret, and you can continue that on through that 23rd fret so that you have the entire fretboard. Back up here, the nut, I need some wood on the back side of that to support that, so I need to measure back that direction toward the headstock around 3/16 of an inch or 0.188. I will make a mark, use my protractor, make a parallel line. So now I've got my wood support, the nut position, final fret, end of the fretboard, and taper. If you have the bridge that you've decided on, we're going to use something like this, I can measure between my E strings here, determine that distance, split that in half, and I can mark that on my intonation point. At the nut, I need to land my E string paths. The E strings at the nut, I like to have about 1/8 of an inch of material toward the edge, from the edge of the string toward the edge of the fretboard. If I'm looking at the high E string, that's a 10/1000 thick string. I want 0.125. But if I want 0.125 from this side, I have to compensate for that for the thickness of the string, right? So if I have a 10/1000 string, the middle of the string would be 5/1000. So I need to add 5/1000 to my 0.125. So I'm going to come in 0.130 and mark a line. That shows me where the center of that high E string is going to be. For my low E string, a typical set of 10s, I'm going to have 46 thousandths. So I'm going to need 23 thousandths to add to my 0.125, which is going to take me out to 0.148. That shows me the dead middle of that low E string. Now I can connect the nut position lines and the bridge position lines to show my full string path. That will also show me that I'm not going to fall off of the edges at the final fret. To calculate the rest of the string paths at the nut position and at the bridge position, I'll measure the distances between the E strings. I'll record both of those numbers and then I'll divide them by 5. Once I do that, that's going to give me a small number. It's going to be different for everyone because the things are going to vary. That shows you the dead middle for the next string. That shows you the dead middle for the next string. That shows you the dead middle for the next string. Easy for you to say. Now we're able to mark A, D, G, and B at the nut position, as well as A, D, G, and B at the bridge, and you can connect those. That gives us our full fretboard, wood support, nut, our intonation point, string paths, and our final fret location. The next video, we're going to talk about headstock design. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Remember, this is going to be the first in thousands. This is definitely the first in this series where we teach you how to tune guitar design. I will see you guys next week.